Today I'm doing an international postdoc workshop about finding grants, and I hope that this will be really helpful for you. I had some people, several different people who were postdocs, contact me and ask me to explain to them how they can find grants if they're not U.S. citizens. And so that's how I got started in putting this workshop together. And the more I delved into this topic, I found that there really are a lot of resources. And so I'm really glad to be able to share this with you. I hope it will be helpful. I also hope that you'll share it with other people here at Baylor, because I think there are a lot of people that are interested in looking for grants, and they may not realize that they are able to find things even if you're not a U.S. citizen or have a green card. So I have three parts of this workshop, but we're really only going to be going through the first two, and the last one is really a resource. So I'm going to talk about eligibility and types of grants that are available for postdocs, and then using how to use our grant lists and then the search engines in order to find grants when you're an international postdoc. And then also I have some tips and more resources. That's mostly some links that you can go to find out more information about different kinds of grants and how to use the search engines, as well as a number of videos that will help you as you're really trying to narrow down some of your searches. So first of all, I want to talk about eligibility and types of grants and how can you determine whether you can apply, and then what kinds of funding is available for postdocs. So I have a list here of a variety of different kinds of grants that postdocs can do. Obviously, we talk about research grants, and that's probably what you're thinking about most of the time when you're looking for a grant. But there are other kinds that might be something for you to think about, and I put the list out here because it might spark your interest and make you realize that there's some other things that you could look for. So along with research grants, the other most common one would be the mentorship and training grants, like a K-99 RU, which is available for people who are non-citizens of the U.S. These kinds of grants actually are intended to help you transition into a faculty position and into being have an independent research agenda. Usually they give you a couple of years of funding as a postdoc, and then 2 or 3 years of funding as a early career faculty member. So they're fairly competitive, but and if you're going to do particularly the NIH one, which is the most common one, you would need to be working with a faculty member who is getting probably an R01 grant or something equivalent to that in order to be competitive to get that grant. But there's some other ones from other agencies and foundations, so that's something to watch out for. There are also fellowships, which would probably give you some money for research, but also a yearly stipend. There's travel grants where you can go to conferences, or you could do research in an archive or another resource. And there are also some diversity grants. We actually have several of them here at Baylor. So usually these are because they're attached to another grant. So NIH offers these for anyone who has another NIH grant. So not so much the R15s, but primarily they would be for R21, R01s or R35s. You are able to then, your faculty mentor would be able to apply for this diversity fellowship if you were to qualify for that. And then that gives you additional money as a postdoc, both for research and then for a stipend. So there are also grants for conferences and workshops, and this is actually a really good opportunity for a lot of postdocs to do. So if you want to organize or work with someone else to organize a conference or workshop in your particular area, then there's money from NSF and other agencies in order for you to do that. And those are actually a little less competitive than some other grants, and we actually have quite a number of those here at Baylor right now, and I'm encouraging people to try to get some more of those. There are also grants for performances or programs, and that would be particularly in the arts and humanities area. And there are grants for education, primarily from NSF and some other agencies, where you could be developing an education program or some curriculum. And finally, something we're also trying to promote to people at Baylor are international exchange grants like the Fulbright. So there are Fulbright Scholar grants for faculty members and for U.S. students and people who've graduated from the U.S. But there are also Fulbright awards for people who are to come to the U.S. So although you're already here, it's possible you could get a Fulbright to be doing other studies either here or elsewhere. And so there's two kinds of postdoc grant submission. And there may be more than two, but these are the two main ones that I'm aware of. First of all, there's the Baylor submission, and that's going to be the most common one. And that means it's a grant that is awarded to Baylor and then routed to you or to your faculty mentor. And it usually, a Baylor submission requires going through using the CARA system to do the submission, requires working with the University Research Administrator as well. Then the other kind of submission is an individual submission, and this is usually for a fellowship or a travel grant. And those are ones that you won't be going through the Baylor submission or the CARA process or working with the URA. You would be just submitting it directly yourself, directly to the funder. So trying to determine which type of grant is sometimes a little bit tricky, and I would suggest that you work with the URA and your faculty mentor to get some information about it. But here's a bit of information that might help you decide. So if you're looking on the solicitation or on the website of the grant, you're going to look to see whether it says it's supposed to be submitted through the institution or that it would be submitted by an administrative official from Baylor. If that's the case, then it is a Baylor submission. If it doesn't say that, if it really talks about you as an individual submitting, then it might be an individual submission. I will say that you need to be careful, because if it's not submitted correctly, that grant may, even if you're awarded the grant, you may not be able to accept it. So you want to be careful that you know which way you need to do that. I sometimes get questions about who's eligible to be a Baylor PI, because it gets a little bit complicated sometimes when you're a postdoc. For the most part, a granting agency wants to make sure that the person who's the PI in the grant is going to be staying at that institution long enough to complete the fulfillments of all the grants of that grant that they're awarding. So sometimes that is hard to do as a postdoc, depending on how long you're planning to be at Baylor or how long your contract is. But other grants are willing to either have you take it with you, or it's something that maybe you'd be awarded with your faculty mentor, and then you would be funded through that as long as you're here at Baylor, but it also would free you to go elsewhere. So you need to be a permanent employee at Baylor. You need to hold a terminal degree in the relevant field. You need to meet the proposal eligibility requirements and any continuing education or compliance requirements. And I have some of those listed there on the side. So postdoctoral fellows are eligible if they're allowed by the funder, and then also by that particular solicitation from the funder. For example, there are some NSF grants like fellowships that you have to be a U.S. citizen for or have other requirements, but there are other NSF grants that you would be eligible for. So Baylor has a few policies for the postdoctoral grant submission. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. The first thing is, of course, you have to have your faculty mentor approving, and approval is required, because you're going to need them to give you time to write. You're going to need them to provide you a letter of support and to help you edit your grant. So that's really the first step in trying to decide whether you're going to do a grant. The next step is really that grant submission process. And because the URAs here at Baylor, the University Research Administrators, have a lot of work to do, we've decided administratively it helps a lot if you talk to your mentor first, and then the mentor talks to that departmental URA and tells them that you have permission to do the grant. And then after they've introduced you to the URA, then you can work one-on-one with the URA. And that's kind of the submission process. And along the way, it may be that you're working with the URA with your faculty member, or maybe you're just working on your own, but we wanted to follow that particular process. And then I've already talked a little bit about this, faculty PI versus postdoc PI. We've done both here at Baylor, and it kind of depends on the kind of grant. And I have known it's quite possible that a lot of postdocs are actually writing large amounts of a grant, which they are not able to be a mentor to be, they have to do it for their mentor, and they're not able themselves to be the PI on the grant. But sometimes that's the best policy. You could be funded through that, but your faculty mentor might end up being the PI on it. In that case, the citizenship isn't going to make as big of a difference if your faculty mentor is already a U.S. citizen or has a green card. I also want to make sure that you know that it's important on your postdoctoral individual development plan, or whatever sort of a review plan you do through your Baylor Ignite, that you make sure that writing grants is a part of that plan, so that you get that counted on your yearly progress report. So now to the main point of what we want to talk about in this particular seminar is the eligibility requirements to consider. So when you're looking at any sort of a grant, there's usually going to be some section that's usually marked eligibility requirements, and they're going to talk about eligibility requirements for you as an individual who are going to be applying for that grant, and also the eligibility requirements of the institution. So you'll want to be looking at both of those. You'll look for the citizenship, of course, and residency requirements if there are any. And some grants have them and some grants don't. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more as we go along. You'll also look at the career stage requirements, like what degrees are required or how long. Sometimes they'll say you have to do it within a certain period of time since your PhD was awarded. Sometimes it's you can only be a postdoc for 5 years to apply for this particular grant or some other amount of time. You also want to look at the institution eligibility. So Baylor is a R1 private nonprofit 5013C university in Texas. So sometimes one of those things is not eligible in a grant. For example, there are grants awarded to certain kinds of like 2-year colleges or Hispanic serving colleges. We are Hispanic, emerging Hispanic serving colleges, but we are not under that particular umbrella right now. You also want to consider limited submissions. Sometimes as you're going through a grant, it will say that there are limited submissions. And what that means is that the funder only wants to see 1 or 2 or maybe 3 grants from all of Baylor under that particular submission for that year. And if you come across that as you're going through the requirements, then you want to go through and look at the Baylor limited submissions policy. You need to register through that link on the website that you are interested in applying for that grant, and then you'll follow. There's a procedure that we follow to figure out who gets to do that. Some other things on eligibility are like the area of research, mentor qualifications if it's a grant that has mentorship, and or perhaps age limitations. And citizenship eligibility categories. This is something new for me as I was looking through this particular subject area. I found that there are a variety of ways that this is listed. Sometimes there's no listing at all. And if that's the case, then you're going to need to find out from the funder and try to contact them directly to find out. Sometimes when there's nothing listed, it means they're really kind of assuming the person's going to be a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident. Sometimes it's assuming that there is no citizenship requirement. So those are two of the ones that I found very common. Sometimes commonly put on there. Sometimes it says U.S. citizen permanent resident. Sometimes it says non-citizen, which means non-U.S. citizen. Sometimes it says no listing there, U.S. citizen or non-citizen. So you'll have to go through and find out which one that is. And I've listed all of these different ones on my funding worksheet, so you'll see what it is that they have on the different grant websites. I will say that, again, if no citizenship requirements are listed, it doesn't guarantee it's non-U.S. citizen can comply. So you need to make sure that you've always verified that from the funder. Okay. The main point I want to talk about is, what are the grant funding lists for international postdocs, and then the grant search engines and how to use them. So we have 4 finding funding tools that I want to go through today that are going to be helpful for postdocs. The first one is this Baylor International Postdoctoral Funding List, and that's a list that I've put together combining really 4 other lists. I have 3 that are there that you can go and also look at individually. One is the Baylor Curated Master Funding List, which lists grants for all kinds of different funders for STEM, for humanities, for early career, for postdocs, for graduate students. I have them all divided up. And there are about 400 total funders on that list. And then I've taken the ones that will fund for different career stages or subject areas, and I've separated them out. So there are different tabs on that particular one. So I took the one that's just for postdocs, and then I merged it with 2 other lists, actually 3 other lists. The Johns Hopkins Postdoc Funding List, which is mostly for medical funders, and then the Harvard Postdoc Funding List, which is kind of more of a variety. And then the other one is the National Postdoctoral Association List, which I wasn't able to give you a link to because it's not available as a link, but I was able to download it, and then I combined those all together. So that's probably the first place I'd suggest you start, is looking through that list. There's all kinds of different funding for postdocs. And what I would suggest is that you download the list, and I'll show you in a moment what it looks like, and then keep the ones that work for you, and then maybe just delete the ones that don't. So that's the first place to look, a curated list from various sources. The second place is GRAPES, which is a UCLA grant search engine just for postdocs, graduate students, and it does have a citizenship search limitation, and I'm going to show that one to you also. After you've gone through both of those, which are more oriented towards postdocs, then you can look through Pivot and Grant Forward, which are Baylor subscribed search engines, and I'm going to show you how you can limit them by citizenship. Okay, so here's the Baylor International Postdoctoral Funding List. There's the link right there, so you can go to see it on Box. And you can see that I have at the top, I have the other three search engines, so you can go directly to them using this list. You don't have to keep those tabs out or find them in a different way. I also have some YouTube channels where you can look, and along with what I've already have at the end of this particular PowerPoint, that tells you how you can learn to search a little bit better for them. And then I have the organizations that are on our funding list. So I have 2 links for each one of these. I have the link specifically to that website, and then I'll have a link to their grants page on the website. I have both links because sometimes one of these will be broken. Mostly it would be the grants or fellowships list, because sometimes they redo them every year, and they break the link and they add a new one. So that way, if this link is broken, then you can probably find it based on this list, this particular one. So in this particular way of organizing, I have the 2 links, and then I have the citizenship tab. And when you click on the little down arrow, it'll pop up and you can look and see which citizenship categories you want to look at. Click those and it'll sort the list that way. Then I have a little bit more about eligibility. This varies based on what was available on the lists that I used. Some of them didn't have very much other than just the fact that it was what the citizenship was. And then finally, I have some other details of what kind of grants that they offer and anything else that was available from the list that I took a look at. So then GRAPE search engine, this is what it really looks like. This box here is what it looks like when you open it up. It has only 600 grants, but they are narrowed to the area that you are working in. And also, if you're working with any graduate students or undergrads, I'm sure most of you are in the labs, you can, I appreciate if you would tell them about this, because they can often find something that's good for them as well. I like this one because it's so easy to search with. So you can search for the amount that you want. You can limit it by the academic level where you particularly are at. And I think it's very nice because it does say master's thesis as well as doctoral dissertation and postdoctoral scholar. The one problem about the other search engines, Pivot and Grant Forward, is you can't really limit it by postdoc, that you will be lumped into early career. And so some of them that will come up are things that are maybe interesting, but you're not actually eligible for, because it's more for people who already have a faculty and tenure track position. So this one is helpful because it lets you search for exactly where you're at. Then, of course, you can divide it by the division or school area. So you can do a keyword search. But one thing I tell a lot of people when they're searching for grants is it's different than searching for, excuse me. It's different than searching for a journal article, which is what you're really familiar with. Instead of trying to find in this very large haystack full of different articles that are out there, you're looking for one specific area and the small number of articles that would fit into that area. So you really have to have very narrow search terms. But grants are very different. They're almost the opposite. Instead of looking for a needle in a haystack full of things, you're really looking for a haystack that your particular grant idea fits under. And so you're looking for broader search terms. My husband works with antimicrobial peptides and H. pylori, but if you put those particular search terms in for a grant, you may not come up with anything at all, because there may not be a grant specifically for that small area. But the purpose of what he's doing is for cancer, stomach cancer, gastric cancer. So if you put gastric cancer or even just cancer in, he's going to find grants that are offered for that particular topic, which then his work would fit under. So I hope that helps a little bit as you're thinking through and using these search engines. So even if you just started out by limiting by the division school, which is just really a very basic area, that probably is going to limit these grants closer to what you might actually need. Then I really like the fact, usually it helps if you already know what you're looking for is conference support or fellowship or some kind of other competition, you could limit that there. And sometimes if you're a member of a particular group, you're not UCLA students, but if you're a person with disabilities or minorities, then that helps you can limit it there. But finally, at the bottom, it has a citizenship that you can limit as well. So the final two are, and after we've done this, I'm going to go online and I'm going to show you these different ones. You can look at it. Are Pivot and Grant Forward. And those are the Baylor subscribed search engines, which you can use while you're here at Baylor. Just log in with your Baylor ID and create your own account if you haven't already. So both of these allow you to limit by citizenship, and I'm going to show you how, because it's a little more complicated, especially on Pivot. They also have they have all kinds of funding, thousands of funding. I think Grant Forward has 90,000 possible grants, and Pivot has something like 30,000. So they have all different kinds of grants. They have federal grants, foundation grants, grants from industries or corporations, and then professional society grants. I do tell people that if you are already a member of a professional society of some sort, then you should just go to their website and look and see what grants they might have offering for you. That might be faster than going through a search engine to find it. But these will let you know about professional societies that you may not be aware of in your field. Both of these also allow you to do keyword searches and then to limit the searches, or to do what I was kind of describing when I talked about the grapes search engine, is to do the limiting first of the things you know for sure you want to limit, and then go back and do keyword searches to see. Because sometimes just doing the limitations will give you real, and maybe a very broad keyword search will give you just the right amount to look through. Both these also allow you to fill in your profile so they can curate grants for you. And that's really helpful. I suggest that you spend a little bit of time to fill in your profile on both of them. And then they will actually find grants for you and either email them to you or put them on the website in a special place where you can go look for it. They also let you save searches and then have the updates of any new grants coming in emailed to you regularly. So that's also a really excellent way to make sure that you don't have to keep on doing the same searches over and over again. So the differences between Pivot and Grant Forward. First of all, Pivot web scrapes the information and keeps your profile updated and other people's profiles updated. That means that it's really useful if you're trying to find somebody else who can be a collaborator or someone here at Baylor that might do work that would help you on your grant or help you on your research. It's available through Pivot. Whereas Grant Forward doesn't do that web scraping, so the only people who are listed there are people who've already put in their own information. It's only about maybe a quarter of the people at Baylor. So it's not quite as useful if you're looking for someone else. Pivot profiles also, as I realized what I just said, Pivot profiles allow you to search for the collaborators, both at Baylor and also at other institutions. So if you're looking for someone who does a particular kind of work and you were looking for some collaborators, that's one place you can go to do that. I would also say Pivot has this new keyword search, which I'm going to show you. It's a circle keyword, and I love it. And I think it's very useful and can be a good shortcut. Now, Grant Forward has more grants, as I pointed out. It's like 3 times as many grants, and it has a lot of smaller grants. So if you're looking for just a small amount of money, that's often the best place to go. And then Grant Forward also has the citizenship limitation right there on the search engine, so it makes it really a lot faster to go. So I want to point out I have a lot of other on-demand grant workshops, especially this Finding Funding one, which I just did last week, which will give a little more detail about some of these grant search engines. You're welcome to download these and look at them. And then I'm just going to go through this before we go online. So the tips and more resources includes all these different ways to learn more about the grant search engines. I'm suggesting that if you are, for the sake of your career, that if you're either NSF or NIH funding, that's what you're looking for in the future, that you consider attending some of their virtual workshops or looking at some of these conference updates. I've given you the links that you can keep track of that, or you can register for that. I usually go to them and I find they're really useful. So if you expect to be funded by NIH, it would be great to go in and look at the workshops to give you an overall view of NIH, to learn the kind of funding at different career stages. Those are all available right there. And then I have these activities that kind of help you go through and working on Pivot, and then a variety of different videos that I find are the most useful ones I was able to come up with as I was looking through to help you figure out how to do specific things. Same thing with Grant Forward, and some tutorials these are just a few minutes each. And finally, I also have some searching on grants.gov. It does not allow you to look based on citizenship. So that makes it a little bit more complicated. You have to really go through the grant to find out more about that. But if you want to look up a federal grant, that is a good place to go. And this gives you a little bit of information about that. So before I move into this next section, are there any questions that people have? Either in chat or whether you have anything you just wanted to ask. Okay. I'm looking for the right, is this the one? Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and look at, this is the International Postdoc Funding List. I'm going to show it to you just a little bit. As you can see, it has the link to the different places. There are, I think, about 240 different ones on here. So that's a pretty good number of grants to look through, and it'll lead you directly to the grant. I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, I was going to just show you, this is the citizenship list. So if you are not a U.S. citizen, the way they're worded in some of these is different. So what you probably would want to do is deselect them all. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, you would click no citizenship requirements. And for some reason there's two. Non-U.S. citizens, then ones that are the grants that are for both U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens. So again, I have two of those. I guess maybe I spelled it wrong, or they spelled it differently. So after you've clicked all of those, that means everything that'll pop up is for someone who doesn't have U.S. citizenship or residency. And then you can kind of look through the grants for that. And again, American Academy of Religion, if that is not your field at all, you could just delete that grant. Same thing with some of these other ones. So a lot of times you probably could delete quite a few of these, and you'll end up with just the few that really would work for your research. And here you can see that I also have the Johns Hopkins list, and that's the National Postdoctoral Association list. And then if you want to see the other lists that are on, like the Harvard one, you have to kind of go to their website and find that. Any questions on that one? Oh, age limitations. That's going to really depend on the particular grant that you're looking at. That's why once you find something that looks like it's in your area and looks like it's about the amount that you would like to do, and maybe you want to go on Grant Forward, which I'm going to show you in a moment, and you could limit the amount, or you could go through that grant list. I think it's probably helpful to go through the grant list I just showed you that you can download from my box folder and see if are there any grants in there that seem to really fit your particular research area, and then see what's available and what really fits what you want to do. And then once you found some that you think are going to fit for you, then you look at the eligibility and find out if there's anything specific. Each grant is absolutely different. I mean, there's certain categories of things that you'll find. Like I think the 5 years being a postdoc is true in some grants, but other grants, they don't have any limitations for how long you've been a postdoc. Some grants will say you have to be under 30, but that's just certain grants. So each one's going to be different, and you'll need to figure that out by looking at the grant. And if you have trouble with that, I'm sure your faculty mentor can help you read through those grants. Sometimes those solicitations, the grant solicitation, can be really long, and it can take a long time to go through, but most of them do have the eligibility listed with a header. So that part, at least, you can look through. But even so, like on the NIH grant, I was using that as an example, and I found out like that the eligibility is like 2 pages long. So sometimes you have to read, and if English isn't your first language, you might want to find someone, and you're not sure you understand the way it's phrased, because sometimes on these government documents, they're rather complicated in the way they phrase things. So I'm sure someone can help you to figure it out. And if you really get stuck on something, you hear a phrase and you're not sure what it means, you can also just send me a question, or send Blake or Stacy a question. We're usually able to maybe look through that. And the URAs are also really good at being able to help you figure that out.
I would recommend looking for conference travel grants for your first small grant. And also, it's not very common to see age limits on grants, just because they're discriminatory. Especially, they used to say, or it used to be more common to see grants that would say 5 years since obtaining your terminal degree. But then they found that was discriminatory against many women who decided to take a pause in their career and raise a family. Meant it just in general terms speaking. So it's not that common, but it is something you should just look out for to be careful.
That's actually an excellent point, Stacy. Thank you. And I should say that there are, I'm noticing more and more, and particularly in NSF and NIH, where I spend a lot of my time, that they are having grants specifically to help you if you have gone through some certain career stages or life stages where you've had to be out of work, in terms of your career for a while, if you've had children or other things that have happened. So there's a lot of leeway in that. I just want to make sure that you are aware of some of the things that you want to be looking for as you go through those. Are there any other questions? So I'm going to go and show you pivot, request, and then I'm going to also show you forward. Okay, so I'll start with pivot. Can you see pivot on the screen now? Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. If you haven't logged in, you'll need to create an account. And I personally like, even though I suppose Grant Forward has more of them, I like Pivot, just it's the one I use the most often, but it's usually helpful to use both of them. So of course you can just search for funding opportunities right here, put in a keyword, or if you want to do an advanced search, this will look just like what you'll see in a library search where you can do either or, and different keywords. And then you have all these limitations on the side. I'm going to show you another way that it works in just a moment that's a little bit more user-friendly. But you can notice, you see that there's a citizenship right here. And rather than having you say the categories I was showing before, like U.S. citizen, non-citizen, you actually would select whatever your citizen, what country you are a citizen of, which I think is helpful because it will limit to that specific place. My husband has a lot of people from Bangladesh, so that's one that I often use. So when you search, you can search this way, but my favorite way to search on Pivot is actually using this funding discovery search, where you have a variety of fields that you can go through, and that's kind of the first level. But then you can also go through to the next level, which would be, like in this case, I'm going from natural physical sciences, mathematics, and technology, which could be chemical sciences, computer science. This is where a lot of the people I know on the call are probably working. Or I'm going to go, for example, in environmental sciences, and then I can go to a smaller area. So I'm going to just go for water pollution. What I like about that is, without having to worry about keywords, I've already narrowed my results down to 146. That's a real nice narrow amount to start with. And also I'm using the keywords that Pivot itself is using to sort their information. So that sometimes if I'm putting my keywords in, it may not recognize them. And so it helps to use the ones that they already have. And so then I'm going to limit this search a little bit more. You might notice that some of these are European grants. These are grants from around the world, which can be especially helpful if you're a non-US citizen and you might want a grant from a different country. But if you want a grant that's here in the US, then you'll want to come down here, and there are 3 different ways that you can kind of limit by the country. One is the currency, another is the language, and then the country of the funder. I usually find it's useful just to limit by the currency. So if I'm working in the US and I want a US grant with US currency, I'll just do it there. So that I've already narrowed it down to 46 results. And so that is helpful because that's enough, as I narrow it down, there are fewer for me to have to sort through to find one that's good for me. You'll usually also want to decide what kind of funding do you want. Are you looking for some sort of research funding, or are you looking for, I usually have a fellowship. I'm going to just go ahead and do research for this one. So I have 14 results, and I may just want to look through all of them. If I'm interested in more than research, I might click that off and try to look through the other ones. But I do need to make sure that I am sorting this by citizenship. And so if I use this kind of keyword search on Pivot, it does not have a list for citizenship. I do have a list for career stages and other keywords, but not citizenship on my page. It might be that there's a way that you can move the citizenship to your search engine, but I haven't done that yet. But I did figure out how to do this one, and that's to refine the search. So I'm going to go over there. It brings me back to this page, and this is where I can list my citizenship. So I'll do that one. And then after I've listed the citizenship, I have to go back and re-click the search I discovered yesterday. Okay, now it's not keeping my other search in there. It was working before, but I'll go ahead and keep on telling you about that one. So I'm refining my search. I've got my citizenship in there. I have, maybe it took my other ones off. So I'm going to go for research projects. So I have my keyword water pollution. I do have my citizenship. I have, and it does say unspecified citizenship. So sometimes even, and this I definitely found out when I was looking through, even though I've limited it by unrestricted, it might just be it's one that doesn't list citizenship, and I do necessarily have to go back and look through the solicitation. I may have to even contact the funder to make sure I really can submit that grant. I see it took off my my currency, so I'm going to go back and, not European. go back and do my US currency. Okay, I have 8 grants to look at. So that's a fairly small amount. Maybe I'm going to want to find more than that. But under this particular one where I'm doing water pollution, my citizenship, and filtered by currency, that gives you kind of an idea of how you could refine your search without even having to put some of your own keywords in. I think that makes it a little bit easier to find things. And once I found a search that really works for exactly what I want, and maybe this one's for research, maybe I want to find one that's for a fellowship, or I want to find one that's for a conference, whatever it is that you want to look through. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I would look through these particular ones, find out if there's one that I liked. I'll just look at one for right now, so you can see what's available. So it gives you the link that you would go to the website, and that's where you would go to find out more information specifically about that. That's the most up to date because that's on the website of the funder. But I have some information that they've pulled off of there, which hopefully is fairly close to being up to date, but you always are going to want to look at the actual website to find out, for sure what they're offering. But this, before I go there, maybe I just want to look a little bit more at it to see, does this look like something I would do? Water Research Foundation. This one says it's a coming soon opportunity, so it's not available right now, but they expect that, well, it says open late 2023. So I don't know if they're offering one now. I'm going to definitely need to go to the website to find out if it is. Often it will tell me the deadline. Sometimes down here, it'll also tell me someone I can contact, which is gold information. So that's what's helpful when you look at some of these things on the grant search engine, like how much did the budget here, when it does say unrestricted citizenship, and then when is the deadline, and if there's somebody you can contact. Those are probably the most important things that I would find on this particular one. So I'm going to go back to my funding search results and say this is something I really, really like this search. So I want to go ahead and I can do 2 things. I can save the search. And if I save the search and I put a name for it, and I probably would put like water pollution, citizenship, and then research. And then if I want to receive any new updated opportunities, like this particular one I just looked at, when it comes through and it has a definite date where it's being offered, then I would probably get an email about that. Then you can get a weekly email by just clicking that box. If you don't want a weekly email, but you would like to have it saved right on Pivot, then you can just do that. So you just unclick this box, put a name in, and save it, and it's going to go to your Pivot box, your curated opportunities. You'll see it on the homepage. If I'm not sure I really want to save the search and get more updates on it, but I like this particular search and I might want to use some of these, I can also do the share a search. So maybe you'd want to send this to your faculty mentor to look at, or you just want to send it to yourself. I do this a lot. I'll just send a search to myself. It just reminds me of what I had, and you can put a message there as you email it to any email that you want to do. So these are, unfortunately, these should be bigger buttons, I think, because they're important. Share search, and then save search, and then the refine search, which allows you to put in the citizenship and those other things. And then a couple other things I want to show you about Pivot. One is the profile section, which I talked about. So if you want to find another profile, I'm going to say, I am working in the area of pollution. I want to find out who at Baylor works on pollution. I come up with 46 results. That's actually nice to know. And I can look and see what department they're part of. And I like this list it's a fairly good search. These people do work on pollution. And I could narrow it down to a certain kind of pollution if I wanted to. Let's see. And I saw hers yesterday, so I want to point this out. I've worked a lot with Young Lee, and I noticed, this is very interesting, because yesterday when I looked at it, her contact details were not for Baylor. They were for someplace else. So this was not updated. So maybe she updated it yesterday, or they found it. So you can see her personal website. You can see some publications, some grants, and that will let me know as I look through this, maybe she is somebody that will help me on this particular area. And what's really particularly interesting about Young Lee is that I actually did connect her with someone who was working on similar work in a different department, that I think when I first connected them, they didn't know each other. So it's hard sometimes to find out people across campus that are doing things that are similar to yours. And this profile function lets you find them. And I think that's kind of useful. So you want to go in not only, this is a way that you could look through people. You could also look at people through one of these colleges. So I can click Robbins College, and that gives me all the different departments. And then I could look through people at Robbins College in a particular department and see what what profiles are available, what people are available. You also are going to want to update your own profile. So if you collect your profile, and then you are able to put in, when you do edit, you'll be able to put links that make sure that it updates the profile for all of your particular work. You can put your ORCID and your websites. And so then after you put that in, then it will web scrape and make sure that this is updated. And you will want to look at this and make sure that all the information is correct. The other part that's really helpful, I think, especially for postdocs, because maybe you're working with other people, other mentors, and you've published in certain areas, but you actually want to move into a different area. And so if you want to find grants in some of those areas you want to move into, you could put your expertise that maybe you haven't yet worked on or you haven't published in, or you can also put in keywords of things that you're interested in hearing about, even though you haven't actually done something in that area yet that's going to show up on your publications. So I think that's really helpful. You'll want to update this profile. And then after you've done that, when you go over to the search page here, it says curated opportunities or saved searches or tracked opportunities. Under the curated opportunities, that's where things will show up for you that Pivot has found for you. And that's really helpful. Also, I think one other thing is that if you're looking to go to a conference and you're trying to find different possible conferences, they have this nice page that has a wide variety of conferences by subject area. So I'm sure you know about certain ones in your field, but this will give you a broader perspective of potential conferences to look at. So if there are any questions on that before I go to Grant Forward, anyone have any questions they wanted to ask? Okay, please interrupt me if you have something. So Grant Forward works very similarly. It doesn't have that nice round keyword search. So I missed that, but it does have, you can see it has curated search templates and curated grant lists. So that's where you'll go if they have some grants that they've put in for you, they found for you. And so a little bit more complicated up here, but basically you'll go over to grants and say search grant opportunities. You come up with a regular keyword search. I've already put in water pollution, so I'm going to go ahead and search for that. I have already limited, and it's interesting because it must have saved it even though I went offline. I've already put Bangladeshi citizenship here, and I think I have limited for fellowships this time. So if I'm going to take fellowships off and go to research project, see what we get. So I have 91 results, and like I said, it does probably have more grants than a Pivot, so that's something to look for. So these are different ones that you could look for. Maybe you'll want to limit them a little bit more by your applicant type. I have early career, so that's what you probably would be going under. And over here, I can say amounts. So someone had asked me if you want just a small amount. So this way, you can actually go all the way down to, whatever. I'm going to say under, it's really quick. I mean, you get there, under $10,000. I've updated the search already. So that gives me 53 results to look through. My keywords here are water pollution, less than $10,000, research project, citizenship from Bangladeshi citizenship, and then early career investigator. So that gives me quite a few. And it is more than we found in Pivot with this kind of a similar limitation. So this might be one that will work better for you. So then once you've done this, I like this search. I want to save it. Over here to save load. So I like this. This is better, I think, than Pivot because it lets you put your name of the search in here, and then you can say what frequency you want for updates. It could be every day if you're very excited about this search or you're looking for something immediately. More probably you're going to want to do every Monday or maybe even just once a month. There usually aren't a lot of updates on this, but depends on kind of how broad the search is. You also, and this is kind of useful, I only have, I think, one this is for Chinese citizens early career grants. Say I wanted to redo that grant search rather than having lots of them that are similar, I might just cover that search over with this one. And that's a way to do it too. So it's a little bit more helpful. And then down here it says, in case there are no new grants, you can either send it anyway or just don't send the email. And that could be a choice that you have.
Virginia, you have a question in chat.
Okay, what is it? Could you tell me?
It says, is it okay to use the same grant proposal to various grant agencies with minimal modifications?
Oh, that's a really good question. And frequently one that we get. I would say generally not, no, but with qualifications. So, and I would say that it's something lots of people encounter because you have one project you're working on, and how is it that, but you don't know if you're going to get that grant from that one organization. So how could you maybe put several grants forward, even though it's basically the same project? So what I would say is you can put the same project forward if the things that you're funding or the work that you're funding is somewhat different. The reason is that the granting agencies want to make sure if they fund you that they get a chance to fund that particular work, and that you're not going to say no, oh, by the way, I got something from another organization. And also, you'd like to be able to accept, if you happen to get both of them, you could get both grants. The way people have done that is sometimes by funding different parts of that work in a different way for each organization. I hope that that's or maybe you put this grant forward first, and then you take the reviews from that grant and revise if you didn't get it, and then you revise it and put it into the next organization. It depends. You have to be pretty creative sometimes to have that happen. My husband's in the middle of doing that right now. He has 2 grants he put forward basically for the same project. And he did one as a preliminary grant, R03, and then another one for R21. But they are different projects on both of them. They're complementary, but they're not exactly the same work. Does that help a little bit? I don't know if that the person wanted to ask me in person anymore. I'd love to hear if you have some specific questions about that. Sometimes we can, help you or your faculty mentor. Often the faculty mentors, if they've done grants, they will be able to help you through that. I will say there was another one that was rather interesting. She needed to go to Europe to do a work with some gospel choirs there, and she did do 2 grants. And I think if I remember right, she got both of them. But one was funding like the travel, the other was funding like staying there. And so you have to kind of work those things out. So it's kind of the same project, but the funding part, you can't get 2 pots of money for the same thing. I will definitely say that. And grant agencies will be concerned if you try to do that. Are there any other questions or anything wanted to go back on that one?
There's a follow-up question about
Sure.
the need for, do I need to have preliminary data before I apply for a grant?
Oh, another excellent question. A lot of grants will say, I'm thinking particularly about NIH and NSF, there are certain kinds of grants, like an RO through R21 says you don't need any preliminary data. But honestly, this often happens is you put the grant forward and it's supposed to not need data, but the reviewers actually kind of want to see some data. So it helps if you have something. I think the main thing the reviewer is going to want to know is that you actually can do what you've said you can do. And the way you can prove that is by showing that other people have done this technique correctly and it has worked, by using papers, of course. And then if this shows that you have done certain parts of this, like the preliminary parts, that this particular technique works, that this second part works, they're going to need to have something that indicates it's not just an idea, but the techniques in your lab actually work. So one is the answer that the granting agency will say on their website is no, this particular grant doesn't need any preliminary work, versus the reality is they're going to want to have some demonstration that this technique is actually, if you're not so much that you can submit it, but whether you're going to get it awarded, they're going to want to know that there's some reason for them to believe that you can actually do the work. And sometimes what you need to do is to try submitting a grant and seeing what feedback you get, and then they'll find out what kind of preliminary. I know that it's nice to think you put the grant out the very first time and you get it. I'm mostly in this case talking about probably larger grants, like your NSF or NIH grants. Other granting agencies, maybe for like a fellowship or a travel or small research grants, may not require really preliminary data. But I will say that most of the time, to be really competitive, you have to show that you've done it and that you can do what you say on the grant. Nobody wants to give you money and then find out that you actually don't know how to do it, or you haven't really done it before. So that's really what the people reviewing the grants are going to be thinking about. Are there I hope I answered that to a certain extent. Any other questions on that?
I have one other question.
Sure.
It says, is it possible to take the funding we receive from these resources to other seed programs like SBIR?
Okay, let me see. Funding received from these resources to others. The SBIRs, the Small Business Innovation Research Grant, is actually a completely different type of. The SBIRs are from federal agencies, and they are awarded to a business, not to a university. Now, the way it works, there's SBIR and STTR, and I forget exactly which is which, but both of them under those can fund research at a university. In fact, they have to. They're kind of a research university grant. But the money comes to the business, which then funnels it to the researchers who are a part of the grant, but are not the ones who directly get the money. So if you get a research grant that is awarded to Baylor, that wouldn't transfer over to an that particular grant. It wouldn't. What in the sense of a postdoc situation, what might happen to you, this actually happened to my husband. He was a postdoc, and with his faculty mentor, he got a grant. And at that point, he thought he was going to have to move to a new. The faculty had said, we're out of money on your project. We're not getting funded on that. You need to find a new job. And so my husband looked for new jobs as well as applied for grants. Well, it ended up he got both the job at Baylor and the grant. So what they did at that point is the money went to his faculty mentor, who was the main PI on the grant, but my husband was a co-PI. So he got half the funds and he was able to take them to work here at Baylor, where the rest, and worked with the postdoc who was on the funds at his previous grant. So sometimes you can be a postdoc, get a grant with your faculty mentor and take some of that money with you, which is terrific, because if your faculty mentor has already gotten grants, they can help you to get your grant, and that might give you money to move. Same thing can happen with an NIH K grant, a KRU grant, where you actually get money to be a postdoc for 2 years here, assuming. And then after you are as you're a postdoc here, if you get a K99 RU grant, there's a really good chance you'll get a faculty position, because it's a very competitive grant. And then, so you're here, you're a postdoc, you then look for a job as a faculty member. Once you get that job, then you are able to move to that university and you take the grant with you. And then you have 3 years of support as a early career person under that grant. So that's like one of the best grants possible. We've actually, I don't believe we've had anyone at Baylor get that grant, but we've had people who got that grant as postdocs come to Baylor. And if you're interested in that, I have a whole seminar on the K99 RU, and we have some people that are willing to talk to you about that. I hope that helps with the SBIR. If you're interested in those business innovation research grants, and that really, you want to talk with John Crandall over in technology and innovation. I think that's what they're calling their thing, and he's the one that can help you find out a little bit more. They're actually doing seminars on those grants right now. Are there any other questions? I'll come back in just a minute. I want to go ahead and share just a little bit more of the ending part about Grant Forward that I was planning to do. Just like in Pivot, you can go ahead and go over to researches and go to your profile. And just like in Pivot, I suggest you go ahead and, add in the things that you need to for your profile. And then I think that's the main thing I wanted to talk about here. That didn't take actually very long. So, here's the edit my profile part. Okay, and then again, once you've done all the editing, you've put your information in. When you come back over here, it's going to have those grants that it will be curating for you that might be helpful for what you want to do. Are there any other questions that people have? And then if not, then I finished, I think, most of what I wanted to talk to you about, but I see there's somebody typing. Yes, I'm recording this. I hope I did that correctly. And certainly I'm going to be sending I think you've gotten the PowerPoint and the links. And in that PowerPoint are the links to some of the other things. But yes, we'll be sharing this pretty soon. And Blake will be able to send that to you. I know I talk rather quickly, and it has a transcript, so maybe that'll help you as you go through. Are there any other questions? Well, then I will say goodbye, and you're welcome to contact Blake if you have something. I see somebody else is typing, so I'll wait for a minute. But if you need to go, then I appreciate you coming to the workshop, and I hope that you do well in your grant searching.